Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness podcast. I'm here with Joe Markovich today, and our mission here on this podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building a transferable or sellable business, and then for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that's transferable and then help you exit on your own terms and conditions at some point in the future. Today's episode is the second in our Exit Readiness Next Act series. 75% of business owners are not happy within 1 year of exiting their business, according to surveys, research done by the Exit Planning Institute as well as PwC. And so the purpose of this series is to make you aware of the many reasons for this disturbing statistic, and then provide you information and guidance and plan for planning now so that you don't become a statistic and it doesn't happen to you. And so today we're going to talk about a post-exit story with our guest, Andrew Walen, who Joe is now going to introduce.
Thanks, Pat. Hey, Andrew, good to see you again. Andrew has had a remarkable full circle journey through music, family, and healing. A magna cum laude graduate of Berklee School of Music. That's a good school. Andrew launched his working career with legendary artists like Aerosmith and Pat Metheny before making his mark as a singer-songwriter in Nashville's iconic Lower Broadway scene. When life called him in a new direction, Andrew became a psychotherapist and a mental health executive, co-owning a practice that was later acquired by Optum Healthcare. After 2 decades in that world, he retired to support his family during the pandemic and ultimately found his way back to his first love, music. Today, Andrew runs the School of Rock in Pikesville, Maryland, where he combines his deep industry experience and therapeutic insight to mentor the next generation of musicians. He continues to write, record, and perform throughout the Baltimore, D.C. area, inspiring others to find both purpose and joy through music. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And it was good to meet you because we both share a love for music. And today I just want to talk about your business experience because you were involved in outside of music. I specifically want to address kind of your life with the mental health business. Can you tell us a little bit about how that got going and what that whole journey was about for you?
Absolutely. So I started out, as you had mentioned, as a professional musician. And when my son was born, I was about 10 years into my career in Nashville. And he was born with some major health complications. And the life of a musician is one where you don't have a steady stream of income. And my wife had a good, steady job with the health benefits. And so I became a stay-at-home dad to help take care of our medically frail kiddo. His name's George. And while I was at home, I realized, well, I'm not going to be a musician. I need to figure out what I am going to do. What is my other love? And I spent a good solid year processing it. And then whatever downtime, which most of my time is downtime, and eventually realized, well, I've always been told I was good at helping my friends and whoever else talk about their mental health issues. My mother was a very well-known psychologist. She always told me I was meant to be a therapist. Of course, I did not listen to her. Chose to be a musician, but eventually decided, yep, this is what I'm going to do. This is my calling. I went to grad school at night, took care of my son during the day, and became a psychotherapist. Moving back to Baltimore in 2007 to be closer to family. My son was 4 years old at the time. And after a year of working at a hospital in their outpatient clinic, decided I wanted to do my own thing. I thought I knew how to do it better, and I was never great at working for other people. And so launched my own practice and then built it into a very large multi-site clinic in DC, in Columbia, Maryland, and Baltimore, Maryland. We had everything from primary medical to nutrition to psychiatry to outpatient therapy, multiple levels of care like partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient, and I burned out. Uh, so I was looking to sell. I also saw that the bigger, well-funded private equity-backed players were coming into town, and were so I thought I better start talking to an M&A guy, merger and acquisition guy, and instead of getting a selling, I got a partner. And that partner helped me relieve some of my financial burden and stress. And then a year later, he said, "Well, I got to sell because I have an opportunity to start a private equity-backed group. And I've got 4 other companies that I'm a partial owner in. I'm going to wrap them all into one big thing. We're going to call it Refresh Mental Health. And we want to grow it and, do a 3 to 5 year, plan for moving on. You want in." And so we managed to get a good price for my business. And I rolled 80% of that equity back into the business and hope the best. And that was 2017. By 2021, we had already sold it from one private equity group to another private equity group, 10x'd out on that one, and then sold it again a year and a half later for another 60% above value, increase in value, and that was to Optum, and they said, "All right, y'all, get lost." And as an owner, I was actually I had already at that point, going back when we sold, as I said, 2021. That's COVID. Now my son at that point is in high school, so medically compromised, and if he were to have gotten COVID, he would have died. So we had to shelter him away into the basement of the house and to keep him safe, keep him alive. That led to a severe mental health crisis on my son's part. And so once again, instead of leaving the music industry, I left the mental health industry instead of to take care of my son's physical health, to take care of my son's mental health. And so I became a stay-at-home dad, and I helped take care of my son. And it was, again, the most meaningful thing that I could do, and I had purpose. And when finally the vaccines came around, he got the vaccine. He was back in finishing school. And then I was sitting there as a 48-year-old retired, fairly wealthy individual going, "Well, what do I do now?" And it took me about 2 weeks of sheer boredom and going, I got to do other things. And once again, I had no concept of what that meant. So it really, as you said, it was a sense of, okay, having all of this, having resources is great, but having no real plan, having no real, what do I do now? Comfort doesn't do much for me. Be able to, build an addition on my house and build an indoor swimming pool. Hey, that was fun. Got a dog, trained my dog. Hey, that was fun. But you know what? I don't feel like this is making a difference in my life. What do I do now?
Right. So it was affecting you emotionally too. You were kind of feeling depressed or lost, or
I was feeling, purposeless. Would I call
purposeless.
it depressed? No. Would I call it maybe I was frustrated. Maybe there was a sense of futility, but again, purpose was the driving force of my life.
Right.
To be a musician and go out and do things, to be to be a husband, to be a father, to be a therapist, to be a business owner, to have when Refresh Mental Health sold, we were the largest privately held mental health corporation in America, in
Wow.
35 states, and countless organizations that I was personally the vice president in charge of all of this this genre of mental health treatment in my little division. That was exciting stuff. I'm an A-type personality. I was used to working 60 to 80 hours a week for 14 years straight,
Right.
taking my computer and my phone on vacations,
Yeah.
handling everything. And now, what? Too much downtime.
Too much
So,
downtime.
yeah,
So
that was
how did you kind of decide on given that you knew that you needed to keep busy and doing something that was meaningful and give you a sense of purpose and that how did you decide on opening a franchise of School of Rock?
that's the biggest trigger was the fact that Baltimore City had a School of Rock that my son in middle school had attended for 4 years. And it was probably the most fun I had seen. So at only these clinics at the time in Columbia and BC and Baltimore, I was treating eating disorders and was large with teenagers. And they're at my days, I'm seeing these kids with depression and anxiety and suicidality and malnutrition and trauma. And then I go, pick up my son from School of Rock, and every single kid is happy and they're having a blast and they're coming bounding out of the school and go, I got to play Led Zeppelin. I got to play, whatever. And they were having such a blast. And I thought I want a lot more of that in my life at some point. I knew that was something I was excited about. Music. From I'd studied music since I was 6 years old. And it was a reminder of everything that made my heart swell. And when I was figuring out, well, what else do I do with my life? Because I thought, well, I'd already done music. I'm not going to go back to that.
Right.
I
Not going
still,
to go on the road, start gigging or
I'm not going to do that. I still was in, I was in a band, locally. We didn't tour or anything. We played locally. We put out a record, but I wasn't going to uh, go back into the industry, which was completely different from the industry I left. There's no record stores. There's no, it's not the same. So, so my wife and I had taken a trip to Europe, and my wife is a huge tea drinker. She wanted to do high tea at every place we went in England and Scotland. And I thought, you know what? I would love to maybe see if I could do like a tea shop. There's coffee shops everywhere. Is there a tea shop? And I started researching tea shops. I'm like, I don't like tea that much. Like the people that do this really love tea. That's not me. So I start going and flipping through, all right, what businesses are for sale? What franchises exist? And School of Rock showed up in my research. I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about this. And so I contacted them and just was like, look, I live in Pikesville. If you have if it's an open territory and I could build a School of Rock in Pikesville, is that even an option? That's the only way I would do it is if I didn't have to drive to go to work very far. And they said, as a matter of fact, we just opened up that territory. Let's talk. And so it started the process. And honestly, I never thought I wanted to own a franchise. All I knew is I didn't want to create something from scratch. I'd done that. It's exhausting. I wanted to start with something that was plug and play, and they freaky, and they ticked all the boxes for me. And what they didn't have is what I have: musical experience and mental health experience and working with kids and working with family. And ever since I was, new to the music industry, I knew how to sell.
So what does your day look like now? Are you you're coming to work? You're owning a franchise, a School of Rock. Could you have ever imagined that in your life? What does your day look like?
So the school doesn't open till 3.
Oh, that's
So I get
musician hours. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's an after school program and on the weekend program. So, building the school, it was a lot. There's a lot of planning, a lot of permits. Building any business is a slog. Took me from the time I signed my contract to opening was about 15 months. So it was a lot, and a lot of it is, doing all the marketing material. I love talking to people, and I love telling them about what makes this great. And that was the fun part. The hard part is, all of the running a business. That's a small business. My revenues just starting out are, I was used to working in the millions of dollars, and now I'm working in the thousands of dollars. And so, it's a very big change, but it's nice. The stress is off. I don't have to make this profitable instantly because I have the resources. I made this about what makes me happy and what is fun. So I hired the people to do the parts that I don't want to do. And I get to be a part of talking to the parents. I talk to the kids. I bring my dog to work. The kids come into my office and they tell me about the music they're working on. They ask me silly questions about, did you ever play this club or that club? And did you know this person that? And we talk a lot of smack, and I make silly YouTube videos and TikTok videos that I use as promotion. And then I do the day-to-day running of a business, payroll.
Right. So you're having fun.
I am absolutely having fun, and I work when I want to work.
Right. Right. What do you think? I mean, as Pat mentioned, a lot of owners, well, first of all, they procrastinate to the last minute before they exit their business, and often at their peril. But what advice can you give owners who are struggling with the idea that, wow, if I leave my business, how am I ever going to find that thing that ignited the fire in my belly like my business did? How am I going to ever be happy again?
So I have a wonderful story that I love to tell about my grandfather. His name was George, like my son. So my grandpa was on his deathbed, dying of cancer. I was 19 years old, and I was failing out of University of Maryland at the time. Spending all my time doing music, hating everything else that I was, doing, and barely going to class. And losing my grandfather, who was like my second father, was just really, really hard. And so he knew I was struggling. He knew I was depressed, and lost. And so he was saying essentially his goodbyes to every single member of the family. He was in his last week. And he pulled me in close. He had lung cancer. He was barely able to breathe. He pulled me in, and he whispered to me, "What do you love?" And I didn't know what he meant. I said, "I love you, Grandpa." He said, No. I loved art. I made it my life's work. Now, my grandfather was a sign painter in the Yiddish Theater in Baltimore in the 30s. He never was good at school. He was dyslexic, and he never went beyond 8th grade. But he was always good with the paintbrush and good with drawing. And he found a way to turn his art into a career, eventually opening up a very successful advertising agency called the Roman Advertising. And, he had Utz Potato Chips was his account. Louisiana Tea was his account. And he said, "I made art my life. What do you love?" And it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I could feel it from the tip of my hair when I had hair to my feet. And I said, "I love music." And he said, "Do what you love." And he pushed me away. It was like saying, "Get out of here and stop worrying about it. Go do it." And he was the first person in my life, the only adult I had who had said, "Follow your heart and your dreams. You will figure it out. Trust yourself." And it was the permission that I needed. It's not that I didn't know what I needed to do or wanted to do. I needed permission. And that permission launched me to drop out of school, focus on music full time, get into the school that I was meant to be in, have an amazing, career, and gave it my all until life intervened and I had to do something else. And then again, I had the epiphany. What am I meant to do? I do this because it's my passion and I know it. And I listened to it and I didn't hesitate because I had already learned the lesson. Don't wait for permission. Take it. Take it. And so that was the lesson that I learned is as soon as you have an inkling, follow. And don't, it's the concept of ready, fire, aim instead of ready, aim, fire. Ready, fire, aim. You have a general direction, pull the trigger. You can always make course adjustments as you go along. But go. Don't get the momentum. Go. That's the lesson that I would say to anybody who is contemplating, what am I going to do next?
But how do you have, just a question, it's interesting you brought up the what you love, because in our next act program, we talk about the foundation of it, which is this ikigai, the Japanese philosophy, what you love to do, what you're really good at, what the world needs and what you can be rewarded for. Like often I always say to musicians, you may love doing it, may be really good at it, maybe there's a need in the world, but can you make a living at it? How did you deal with that part of it? I mean, I know you didn't have the money, but what if you're in a situation where you need to continue working and your business is something that, that's not going to provide you with the lifestyle that you wanted to sustain?
I think that's an interesting question. I'm not sure what I would say to that person, except that your happiness is probably more, your happiness and your mental wellness is probably more important than the financial style of living that we're used to. It's no different than, so as a therapist, I had come across individuals who would say, I can't get divorced. I will be too broke. I wouldn't have enough money from the sale of the house. And I'm like, if getting divorced would make you happy and you had to give up that $250,000 in equity in the house, is your happiness worth that? Yes. Yes. If you're saying anything other than that, you're lying to yourself. Your happiness is something that you cannot buy. You're unhappy and look, you have the money. So what happens when you both have the money and you're out of the stress? Yeah, man, it's worth it. So it's a balance. If you're an entrepreneur, you know how to make money. You know how to. You just have to give yourself permission to fail until you figure out building the success.
That is an interesting point you made about the fact you decided rather than start something from scratch, you would kind of pick a proven model, like a
Absolutely.
proven business model. And because I've heard stories where business owners, they sell their business, they think, well, I've done it once before, I can be a great success, I can do it again. And then they pick the wrong business, the wrong location, the wrong partner, whatever it is. And then So is that something that you really recommend if they start another business, that they look that something's already going? That
I think so. My experience so far, and I've talked to other folks who've owned other franchises, and you got to do your research. It's not just finding a franchise that sells a product that you like. Is that franchise so well established that they've got a blueprint for everything? So for instance, there's a guy who I've been helping, who's a member of our Chamber of Commerce that I belong to. And the franchise that he bought included, was like a dog treats and grooming and training. And he put himself next to a like an acupuncture place. Well, okay, the dogs who are getting bathed are probably going to bark a lot. And you're next to, you've got one thin wall to an acupuncture place that's like, we need quiet. Well, School of Rock, for instance, knew exactly how to engineer a quiet space so we don't affect the people around us. The guy who had this franchise for dog grooming, they didn't care about any of that. They didn't think ahead. They didn't have like, here's how you soundproof and here's how you protect yourself and here's like none of that. Whoever you're getting involved with should have thought of every problem ahead of time and solved it. And if they haven't done that and they haven't coached you through that, and that is not the franchise I would spend my time with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Pat, did you have any questions or things you wanted to add? Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew, you had mentioned earlier that you were having this period after you exited at some point where, ah, who am I? What's my purpose? Where's meaning in life? One of the things that we highlight, the 75% statistic of owners who are miserable or unhappy after 1 year of leaving. Some of the reasons would be their identity has been wrapped up with I'm a business owner. I mean, wherever they go for whatever period of time, it can be 40 years sometimes. They go to church, they go to the cocktail party, they go wherever they go, they're a business owner. And then the next day, they're not. Um, and oftentimes they'll go on vacation and for a year or two, but then after the vacation, the traveling around the world, the boat, the golf, the whatever it is, they wake up one day and they think, oh, wait a minute, who am I and where is the purpose and meaning in life? And so Joe and I a year or so ago thought, here's what used to happen with our exit planning process, our comprehensive planning process. We would tell owners, you don't have a plan for life after the business, you need one, or this could happen to you. Well, a year or so ago, Joe and I got together and we decided, you know what, we need to do better than just saying you need this, let's provide a solution. So we created this process that's the Next Act process. But talk to us about that a little bit more, what it was like when you were no longer a business owner, and your identity and all of that. Did that piece impact you? And if so, how? And if there's any kind of counsel that you can give listeners on preparing for that time when it happens.
It's funny. As a business owner, we're typically thinking about bottom line. We're thinking about hard data, uh, KPIs, right? When we think about our personal lives, I don't think men in particular, but most people who are, interested in being the boss are thinking about what that means for them personally. What is a KPI for my own individual life? KPI might be key happiness indicators. If you haven't sort of figured that out, then you're right. You don't have a sense of identity. And I think about sort of 8 key pieces as a therapist. So I specialize in working with men, and there were my 8 slices of a full life. Physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, work, friendships, family, personal development, and purposeless joy and adventure. And if you're only working on one area, work, it's not full life. So I asked these individuals, again, mostly men, shade in on this pie chart how much of each of those slices you're actually working on, how much energy you're putting into each slice. And invariably, it looks like, a misshapen wheel with one big spike under the work category. And I'd say if you pull back on this and you think of it as a wheel on your car, and you're driving, how bumpy a ride is that? Pretty bumpy. And that is not a sustainable way to live your life. So how do we even it all out? So instead of thinking about my identity as my work, how do I rethink my identity is all of these 8 different pieces? How can I increase some of those that are really meaningful? And then what does it mean to be more full in each of those? It's different for everybody. There isn't like one way. And it is a big chunk of work to figure that out. And that's where I sort of had to do my own work. What does it mean to work on my physical health again, which I had not spent a lot of time on?
Yeah,
Uh,
what's interesting about your situation too, though,
yeah,
is not a few things, but one is you replaced the significance, purpose, and meaning of being a business owner with again being a business owner.
I do. But with instead of the crazy hours, I work 20 hours a week. I found balance. And that was the thing that I needed to do. I realized that I don't want to be a stress case for another 20 years. I'd done that. I pulled out of that most I, and I'm grateful I did. I'm happier than I've ever been, but because I found balance while also finding purpose.
So you can take the time, whatever the 80 hours you're working a week, those hours that you've got now, that
Yeah,
valuable time, and invest it in those other areas that
absolutely.
also make a full and complete life. That's interesting analogy because we that's part of our program, right, Pat? We the 8 different categories that you mentioned. That's exactly right. You have to develop some kind of a time and portfolio or a happiness portfolio.
I like that. Happiness portfolio is great. That's really great. I like that. But yeah, I think that's, what's the advice and what the experience was is I had to also be patient. I didn't, I rushing into something headlong is also a recipe as a business owner, how you get into trouble. You gotta be able to pull back and look at the big picture and figure out what's the right move while also not being stuck in analysis paralysis, right? It's a balance. And that was my thinking is, all right, I gotta go back to something I love. What do I love? And as soon as I said that in my head, my story with my grandfather biked right back in. I don't know if everybody gets that opportunity, and maybe just being a business owner of any business is enough. But I guarantee you, it wasn't just any difference to me. I had to be purposeful, and working with people was my purpose.
Yeah, and that's what we want to help with this process. We want to help folks, number one, figure that out,
Yeah.
what it is they love to do that's going to bring a sense of fulfillment, purpose, meaning. You that was seemingly easy for you because of your interaction with your granddad, and you
Yeah.
immediately knew when he said what he said. You knew immediately what that was,
Yeah.
and so immediately you had new purpose and new vision to move ahead, create a strategy and a plan. So that's part of what we're finding is not every business owner knows what that is after a number of years as a business owner. They've been a business owner, center of everything, operationally and otherwise, and they've kind of lost that. You know what? I don't know, and
So
that,
so
and
that's
that's
the big question is
yeah.
how do you identify your passion?
Mhm.
Because and I think that is where it gets tricky, right? Because if you've only been a business owner and you forgot to have a full life, you don't know what your passions are.
Yeah, and
Right.
so Joe has we've created a process that we think really is effective at doing that and helping.
Yeah, it
By the
isn't
way,
a. It's a discovery process. It is true. It's a
Ah,
discovery. And some don't have that the history that you have, but ultimately, it's really getting to for the owner to understand who they are, what their core values are, for example. What their core strengths are. What other people see as their superpowers. There's a lot of different things that can kind of help uncover that. It may be just buried right now because they haven't really looked at that for a long time, if ever. And through that process, when you start to kind of really identify who it is you are, your core, what really motivates you, what you say of what your love is, what you're really good at, then you can start to kind of put that energy into finding something that's gonna fit well with that.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
so, hey, Andrew, would you say, as we wrap up here, that the School of Rock is now, would you consider it like a lifestyle business that you could see owning for the rest of your days because you've got such purpose and meaning and you enjoy it and you have the control and freedom that you want and everything?
I absolutely do, and then I have to rein myself in because my business brain is already like, I'll open a second. I'll go. They just opened a territory in England and or in UK. Maybe I'll go open up one in Edinburgh, which is my favorite city in Europe. Yeah, I have to reel myself.
Yeah,
That's right.
so
Right.
you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so it wouldn't surprise me if we talk to you again in a year or two and you've got 20 of these things all over the world.
Uh, I want to stay married. I'll keep one, and
Well, we would encourage that greatly.
Yeah, staying married for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I tell
and
you, I have to say this: the support and love of my wife of 25 years,
mm,
having her in my corner, everything that I've attempted, uh, is always in consultation and always with her support. I mean that means everything to me.
Well done.
that's right. Yeah, that's for sure. I think one thing just to add is sometimes business owners actually don't think about their spouse, but their spouse has a very important role in this transition. They may not want to spend having. They may not spend the rest of their life with you being home every day.
Yeah, they may not want to be having breakfast and lunch with you every day. Uh, okay, well, listen, as we wrap up here, is there anything you'd like to promote today? Well, we've talked about the School of Rock. Is there anything you want to promote about the School of Rock or anything else?
I tell you, the thing that I want to share more than anything is that giving yourself permission to dream and follow a dream, that is the there's a whole lot of have tos and shoulds that exist in our lives, and we forget that as kids we had dreams and desires, and oftentimes we didn't really pursue those. The greatest gift I have was that music was always given to me as a gift from my family, and then the opportunity to see myself do it as a life by my grandfather, and then to go and pursue whatever I wanted by my partner. It's about the relationships you build, the trust that you build. Any success that I've ever had is because of the people that I put around me that I love. Just make sure you surround yourself with those people. That's my biggest takeaway from this. And the people I surrounded myself, even in business, School of Rock, the reason I chose it is I went through every single level of interviews. I interviewed them as much as they interviewed me. And I came away feeling so good and positive. There wasn't a single person that I didn't have an immediate connection to. That's the secret to success for me. So find that.
If anyone wants to reach out to you, would you be open to it? And if so, is there contact information that you could share with folks?
Just yeah, I mean, you can hit me at Pikesville at schoolofrock.com.
Okay.
And I'm happy to
Yeah.
chat with anybody. Uh, and send your kids.
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
right. Well,
Send your
very good.
kids.
It's been a joy to have you with us today, Andrew. Thank you again for your
absolutely.
time.
Thank you, Joe and Pat. Appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And listeners, if you want help planning for that next act, you're concerned about what would I do? I've been a business owner for 5, 10, 15, 35 years. What would I do next? Where is meaning? Where is purpose? So on and so forth. Happiness, which was a major theme here. Please reach out to us. through our website, nslp.com or ExitReadiness.com, and Joe will contact you for an exploratory conversation. And then too, if you need help maximizing the value of your business for an eventual transition or planning that eventual exit, please consider reaching out to us. And if you've benefited from today's episode, which I'm sure you have, please consider sharing it on social media and hitting that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate that. Thank you for listening. And until next time on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Pat Ennis with Joe Markovich signing off.